I'm Diane.
And I'm Johnny, and you're listening to
Paranoid
Fantasy. Woo! Well, welcome back, Diane. I'm so excited to continue our podcast adventure because I just noticed like people are actually listening to our little show. And even though I was like, let's record tomorrow, but then I saw we had 18 listeners to our last episode. So I thought, hey, let's build the momentum and do what we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome aboard, 18.
Speaking of welcome aboard, we're going on the cruise ship tangent today. This has always been like sort of interesting to me to actually plan a trip with your family to get on a cruise ship and go out in the middle of the ocean for a week and literally be on a floating city where there's restaurants and swimming pools and casinos and game shows, gym, spa, you name it. And I mean, it's interesting because it takes a lot of planning. I've just never had one of those jobs where I could say, okay, in August of next year, like I can definitely take a month off to go to Bermuda. Like I feel like that's always been not a luxury I have because of the type of work that I do. Have you ever taken a cruise?
I never have. Do you have to plan like a year in advance? I think some of my friends have talked about it.
A lot of people do, and I think that's definitely part of the culture in cruising, which is like just so fascinating to me because it's just such an American, almost like a cult in a way. And you just hear, I think a lot of the excitement that people get is just saving up their money, especially like, I would say like middle class families, because they know exactly what they're going to be spending on that boat and there's no surprises. So that they know like, for $800, they're going on this 5-day trip and everything from their food to their room to, all of the fun with their family. Like they know exactly what that dollar amount is going to be. And then they can like make a down payment and then they can go ahead and use that like year or 6 months to pay up that, for that trip. And that's always like, I think the fun of a vacation is like just that anticipation.
Sure.
My brother does it. And actually there's even like last minute deals for people that want to like just have short notice. But long story short, I mean, it is definitely like the largest growing, like vacation.
Family pastime.
Yeah, it's the largest growing industry as far as like hospitality and tourism, cruise shipping.
Well, and I've heard that you can do a lot of different things. So the family, it's nice because the adults can do one thing, the kids can do other things, and they can meet and eat. So I mean, I've heard a lot of people that enjoy, taking their families because they can all do something.
Right. And that is going to be, basically, I mean, that's a big lead in, but that's basically setting the tone for our topic today. Do you want to just tell us what the topic is?
Yes, the topic is going on a cruise and with 4 members of your family and coming home with 3.
This is the story of Amy Lynn Bradley and her family. And, this kind of vibe that I've been setting about, okay, going on this vacation with your family, this is the mindset that Amy Lynn and her family was in during March of 1998. So I guess what would that be? Like, that's 20 years ago today. Amy Lynn Bradley, she was born in 1974. And she was 23 at the time that her family decided that they were going to go on a cruise ship. Her father, Ron, her mother is Iva. Her brother is Brad. He was 21 and he was still in college, but Amy was just 23. She had just graduated from college and had actually just put like a payment down for her first apartment. And she was really about to just go ahead and move on with her life and move out of her family's home, start a new job. And the family actually, the mom and dad actually decided, okay, we're going to take this family, our family, on like one last family vacation. And you know what that's like when, you're a teenager and and you may have like brothers and sisters and they're about to move out, and it's just kind of like, let's just have this one last run all together before everyone starts moving away and having families.
Yeah, and the thing with that is those types of vacations, though, to me seem like kind of anti-family. Like I think I'd want to do something where everybody would be doing the same thing together. But I guess that's a big, draw, and especially in the advertising for the cruises, is that everybody can kind of do their own thing. And so probably for a 23-year-old who's getting ready to, like you said, start her own life, and she's got her place and everything, and she's going to want to sort of branch out on her own. And the 21-year-old boy, I'm sure he was the same way.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I mean, when you're that age, I really think that, the last thing you want to do is like go on vacation with your family, because you're starting this new career. And in fact, I mean, Amy actually, apparently when the parents told her about this cruise, she really did not want to go. And although she was on the swim team at her high school, she had been quoted as telling her friends that she really does not like the ocean. She did not want to go on this cruise. And her father and her brother apparently just basically like begged her and were like, basically, let's go. Come on, you're going to enjoy this. And it was kind of sweet. It seemed that she and her brother actually had a good relationship, and they were pretty close in age. So this is March 21st of 1998, which, I remember that. I would think I was I would have just been like a freshman in high school. And she and Ron and Iva, her parents, and her brother Brad, they left for a week-long cruise. This was Rhapsody of the Seas, which was owned by, Royal Caribbean. And, this might be kind of jumping ahead, but I mean, we've talked about what's interesting about cruise ships, and they're registered in different countries. And what does that mean, Diane, for the cruise ship passengers and employees?
Well, it means that, first of all, you'll register when you get on a vessel, so that, the captain knows who he has on his vessel. And then citizenships, and there could be some, like if you're wanted in certain territories, you might not even want to be in those waters. Not that I would know anything about that, but there's just a whole lot of things. And as far as like who's marshaling those waters, there's international waters, there's unprotected waters. But
exactly. So there's really that's a really great point. I was actually talking more about the Royal Caribbean registering the ship under the flag of the Bahamas, which means they're not abiding.
Okay, so they're set up their law is they would set up their tax structure within those parameters instead of those of the continental United States.
Exactly. And also the legal jurisdiction. They're not being accountable for, like the legal, the labor laws of, a stricter, more democratic society like United States or, Germany. So they're getting away with paying the employees less. And if something goes wrong on that ship, they're not going to have necessarily like the FBI or the CIA getting involved unless they're willing to invite those agencies on for like the more extreme cases. But there's a lot of information about crime, whether it be like robbery or God forbid rape, or in this case we'll explain what happens, but it's not like it's happening in your hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana, where you're going to have a bunch of investigators show up and have the backing of that accountability. So that's why it's like when you're kind of getting on those big cruise ships, even today, you're kind of you're going into, as I say, like a different territory. You don't have the same protections.
You'd be wise to know, what territories you were going through and what your rights were and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But, I wouldn't think of that if I was going on a cruise. I wouldn't think of that necessarily. So you're probably wondering what happens to Amy and her family.
Yeah, we'll get right into that after this short break. All right, so here we go with this story. As we mentioned before, Amy Lynn Bradley, her parents Ron and Iva, and her brother Brad, they go ahead and enter embark on to Rhapsody of the Seas. And this was in March of 1998. And this is just about the last week. On the first day, they actually boarded the ship and they take a family picture in front of, the side of the ship where there's like a little sign, and it's just this like welcome party. And, they go onto the ship and they start enjoying that. And Amy and her brother Brad seem to be really getting along. And that first night was really just, the welcome party, and nothing really eventful.
You're kind of there. You're kind of scoping out. You're scoping out.
Yeah.
You're thinking, who's cute? Just
right. And there's a little detail. I think that I don't remember how it happened, but maybe it was a text message that Amy actually just was, still kind of in touch with her friends, her close, friend network back in Virginia. And she was texting him like, yeah, I'll be back in, so-and-so amount of days and look forward to seeing you. So her mind, I think she was enjoying herself, but her mind was definitely like, she was excited to get home and move.
Right.
The second night, the second night, the family goes to this formal dinner. And they all sit down, and as you know, in cruises, there's usually like several options of restaurants, and they usually like assign you a time to go and eat. Like there will be like a 5 o'clock sitting and a 7:30 sitting. So the family goes and eats, and it's all kind of it's very like scripted almost, or very planned out on these cruise ships, because there's over 2,000 people on this boat, and it's like an assembly line. And on top of that, they take a picture of that family during the dinner. And it's like the amusement park where they take your picture. And then when you finish eating, you can go to the board and, see your picture. And then they want you to buy it. Strangely, after the family ate dinner, they go up to the board, and there was a picture of actually Amy and her brother Brad, and it was missing, which the family thought was really strange because there was just like a hole in this banner, and the photographer explained, he had printed that out, but it was gone. So that was kind of a bizarre incident.
Yeah, later. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. Continue on. I have, there's a detail about that picture I can share later.
Yeah, please do. After dinner, the parents kind of go up to get, just settle down, and Amy and Brad, they actually go to the nightclub. And later on, there's like a film crew that was, documenting the cruise, again, probably to sell to, the patrons. But
sure,
you could see that they're kind of dancing and having a good time. And they start to make friends with, like the employees that are on this cruise ship. And they're in a band called Blue Orchid. So eventually around 4 a.m., after Amy has been like seen sort of dancing with one of these band members whose nickname was Yellow, he had sort of kind of like been flirting. They've been flirting and dancing together. But at 4 a.m., Amy and her brother decide to go upstairs and relax. I guess they've been drinking. And I want to say, yes, the band's member, his name was Alistair Douglas, and he was known as Yellow. He actually said that he had left Amy around 1 a.m. So apparently Amy and Brad go upstairs. Brad gets into bed, falls asleep, and Amy's father, Ron, is still up, and he kind of has a few words with Amy, and he sees that she is like kind of sitting out on that. They had a balcony outside of his stateroom. Well, it is interesting that this boat was actually on its way to Curacao, and the next day was supposed to be basically, I don't know what it's called. I know when they're in movement, it's called like a sea day because the boat's at sea. But the boat was going to be like docking at Curacao, and everybody's getting off. So it's 4 a.m. The father can apparently see this patio balcony from the bed, and he sees Amy, and he kind of nods off to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Around 6 a.m., he wakes up, he looks out and there's, no Amy. As he's trying to sort of get his bearings, he goes out. I think this has been like reported in different ways, but apparently her cigarettes and her lighter were missing, but her shoes were in the room where she stayed, which I guess is the room next door to the parents. And meanwhile, I guess the mother's still sleeping, but he goes in and he sees Brad, the brother, is in bed sleeping, but Amy is gone. I guess he doesn't, realize it. And according to his story, there's no foul play suspected of the father. But apparently he goes up and starts to kind of look around and, think, okay, where's Amy? She must have just stayed up really late. And he's not going to really, panic. But he goes upstairs and he's kind of looking for her. And from here, the timeline, it just starts to move very quickly.
It just looked like she stepped out onto the balcony to have a cigarette and to look at the sky and the ocean and just sort of have a moment outside. And I wonder if she was when she was at home, if she would do that, if she would step outside to have a cigarette early in the morning. Because at her age and being on a cruise ship, I would have thought she would be running around the ship all night, if she was going to be up smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that, it wasn't so uncommon for 20-year-olds to be smoking. I mean, a lot more people smoked in the 90s.
Sure.
But the fact that she was missing her shoes and that the father was sort of a parent, I think, could feel something. And a lot of the wait staff earlier in that night and that dinner had really been flirting with her, and he noticed she was getting a lot of attention. So I think that combination, and also just being on this huge boat and your daughter's gone, and it kind of felt creepy.
Hadn't one of the band members, Yellow called her room to speak to her, asking for her by name, and when her parents asked her, she said, "Oh no, he's a creep. He sort of scares me."
Right. Yeah, I forgot that detail. So there was sort of this the tone was set that this guy Yellow was not something that she really wanted to care to be around, I guess, earlier in the day or right after the dinner.
Right. And there was a bunch of people that came in that weren't registered to be passengers on board, and they had come for this show. There was that band was playing, and they came in and watched the show, and nobody knew who they were. And so the passengers are just assuming that I guess it's okay that they're here. I mean, you're on vacation, you're at a concert, you're not trying to be the visitors police or anything. But that seems like it would be awfully dangerous if people from the mainlands or the islands could just come up onto the boat without being registered or dignitaries.
Exactly. I mean, and that's one of the things we have to remember, this is 1998. So this was before, the whole world changed in September 11, because I remember exactly 1998, 99, 2000. Mm-hmm. I used to actually just go to the airport, sometimes with $100 when I was in North Carolina in school. And I would save my allowance money and literally go to the airport, walk through the X-ray, get on the plane. And it was not that big of a, deal. Now you go to the airport, it's you have to kind of mentally prepare for this days in advance, because it's such a, they really scrutinize you. But at this time, at least on this cruise ship, there were, just sort of unscrutinized people getting on and off the ship at the different ports. It's around 6 a.m. The father has noticed that Amy is not there. So he goes out, he starts talking to some of the staff, and they're not particularly bothered because in their mind, they're okay, it's a 20-year-old girl. She could be anywhere on this boat, and maybe she stayed in someone else's cabin, or, she's maybe with one of the kids that she met, or she's walking around. They didn't seem particularly alarmed. But when Ron goes back to Iva, Amy's mother and his wife, she later recounted that he just looked like he had seen a ghost when Ron came back and really said like Amy is gone. So the family like quickly, mobilizes, and they all start to like go different ways and I guess look for Amy and start asking the passengers. Apparently the father ends up going to, I guess, the ship, one of the officers, and really begging them to make an announcement to look for their daughter. And they're really hesitant to do this because I guess they said it's early in the morning and they don't want to disturb the other passengers and they don't want to create any type of concern, over the boat, over the, in the ocean, tourism community. Like they don't want to upset the passengers that somebody's missing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you feel about that, or if you've ever experienced like someone that was just not really willing to help in an emergency because they don't want to upset somebody.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what that would have felt like. And I think the best that they did for them was they announced they asked Amy to report to the to an office or something, but they didn't say this girl's missing and please everyone let's try to find her on the ship. How frustrating! I would be going out of my mind.
Well, I believe that it really took a while for them to agree to even do that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, the sooner the better. And I believe that announcement was actually made later in the day. And it is definitely important to note that a lot of these passengers, like over 1,000 of the passengers, had actually disembarked. So at this moment, the ship has arrived in Curacao, and the family actually totally loses control of the situation because once those doors are open, all of the passengers and, equipment and, trolleys and baskets and whatever start to leave the ship because they're going to like renew, whatever, all the inventory and the stock while the passengers are out having fun on land so that everyone can get back on the ship and they can go to the next port. And the family
had begged that they would keep all the boats up and do a search before any of that occurred, but they didn't let that happen.
The family decides to actually get off of the ship because they feel like they have a better chance of like working with the law and the authorities and getting the FBI involved on land than they do on the ship. Now that for me, I don't know if I could like leave the scene of the possible crime and just get off on some random island and then watch that boat like sail away, not really knowing. If anything, I would maybe like say like let's split up, like mom, go and call for help on the island, and like I'm not leaving the ship until. But let's think about this. I mean, what is a normal response? You see someone on a balcony, you're in the middle of the ocean, and then you don't see them on the balcony. I mean, what?
Yeah, I would think that she fell overboard. I that would definitely cross my mind.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to really get more information on this. I know there's been a lot of interviews, but like what was going on in that, and the true narrative of how things played out, because this is another reason why like I kind of don't want to go on a cruise because you're in the ocean, mm-hmm. and people do, like so many countless people actually do disappear from cruise ships, and sometimes they go overboard and sometimes they're found and sometimes, they're not. But, apparently with this crew, they were not about to go, stop the ship and go look for her.
Well, and they said that it was determined that she had not fallen overboard. And I thought, I would like to know the details of that. I'm with you, because unless the balcony was over another wide deck where it would have been impossible for her without bouncing, to fall overboard. It's kind of interesting. I'd be interested to know how they determined that she hadn't fallen overboard. But that was part of the evidence. They determined that she had not fallen overboard.
Right. And one source, and that's, I should kind of like correct something I might have said that was misleading. The the Netherlands and Antilles Coast Guard actually did conduct a 4-day search on March 27th. So I don't know if they held the boat there or not, but for 4 days they did, at least say that they like looked under every nook and cranny and that they could not find her. And the Royal Caribbean cruise actually chartered a boat to go out into the water and actually look for her, but they ended their search on March 29. Amy was actually a trained lifeguard, and the investigators made a point that there was no evidence she had fallen over the railing or that she had even died by suicide. So, I mean, these are some pretty, I would just say like conclusive statements to be made on a scenario where you really don't know, what had happened. I didn't get the impression that she killed herself. It's just when you're mixing alcohol and a cruise and you're 23 and, it's 4 a.m, I just feel like those are not going to help in being safe in this kind of, but again, I mean, I can't say I haven't been in that case in myself, but it's just really sad how this ended.
That she hasn't surfaced. So and she had such really high plans for her life, and she was excited about it. So it's not like this was this melancholy person who was looking maybe for a soulmate and then just wanted to disappear. And she, there were no rifts in the family. So it wasn't like she was going out with an axe to grind or something. She just actually didn't want to leave the life that she was in to go on the cruise, except that, the family really insisted. So, and boy, I would feel, I'd be thinking about that too. I think it'd be really hard as a parent not to feel you would just be going over all of your decisions that you'd made about everything, like over and over in your mind. I mean, they just must have been just sick with worry,
Well, exactly. And when we get into sort of like the investigation part, I mean, the worry in the case of the family just gets like darker and darker because the theories of what could happen to Amy, they just kind of don't end. And even 20 years ago, they're still, hypothesizing, which is good because that means people are still looking for her. So when we come back, we'll actually get into some of the investigation and the theories.
Great. That sounds really interesting. This case is just fascinating. It drives you crazy because you just want to know what happened.
The night of that dinner, as I mentioned before, the picture of Amy, which there was a file of that, I guess a digital file on the employee, photographer's, disc, but it was missing in the retail presentation where the guests can actually buy them. It was missing off the board. And you said that there was a detail about that you would share.
Well, he'd actually given Amy's mother the ticket to claim those pictures when he could retrieve them, and to this day she still has that voucher.
Well, it's even also interesting that this picture has sort of kind of come back to haunt them in a way because it's the last photo ever taken of Amy that we know of, and it was with her brother. And that photo has been become sort of iconic because later in this investigation, some of the theories use that photo to make this comparison. I'll just get to the point that a lot of people think that Amy was actually sold into sex trafficking. And this is sort of just like a very broad like topic / conspiracy. And it's very, very creepy because I feel like it's one of those things where something a lot of people talk about, but it's also like this underground thing, which could be like, it's like talking about the priests, like when I first started hearing about like priests, like molesting young men, I was like, I didn't really want to believe it. And I kept thinking, okay, it's just like conspiracy. And then like the deeper you dig, you're like, oh my God, that's all real. Or like the Scientology people. I mean, it just sounds so kooky that the Scientology would be controlling people and, taking their money and like this cult. And then you start to realize that it's a real thing, and people are, I mean, that is sort of like more on the fence because there's not as much like people that are like giving testimony, because there's a lot of people that argue that testimony. But I mean, with this like sex trafficking thing, it's sort of sensational. It's a sensational story, so it's hard to know what's real and what's not.
Yeah, I think with any story of that nature, it isn't, especially, the conflicting part about her telling her parents that Yellow, the man named Yellow, gave her the creeps, but then the tape showed her dancing with him all night. And it probably looked like, they were having fun and everything. And I mean, it's not unusual for a 23-year-old just to downplay something just so her parents don't like radar in on it, and that's just like normal. Well, that's more teen behavior, but 23 is not that much older. And especially if she was very sheltered. But there's such a psychological component to any where someone can actually take control of somebody else, and like that cult mentality or that vulnerability that makes them a victim or a target. Was she like her pictures? I mean, she was like she was pretty, but I mean, she wasn't like where you'd be afraid to take her anywhere. That somebody would steal her. I mean,
oh well.
I can't take my daughter out. She's so beautiful.
Oh my God, Diane. Well, I guess she must be fine then. She definitely wasn't.
It's just like, geez. I mean, why you're packing for vacation and you're like,
I totally thought you were going for somewhere that. Well, I don't know. No, but I do want to say. I mean, I would look at this girl and I would think, okay, you might be able to like drug her and take her off the boat, but I mean, she's going to fight back. I mean, she was on the swim team. She's 23. I mean, I would think it's like takes a lot to indoctrinate someone like Amy into that type of, circus or circle, as opposed to somebody who's like, from a very, very like devastated country that is needing money and you can like systematically abuse them. I just feel like to take someone off of like an American, themed cruise ship overnight and make them a, like basically into this like sex trafficking. I mean, that just seems more unlikely that they would have success with her willingness. So the first theory is just that she was kidnapped on the night of that dinner on March 23rd. That she was drugged to keep her quiet, and then she was like moved off the ship on March 24th when it first docked in Curacao.
Yeah.
The second theory actually is that she just fell overboard or that she drowned, or else that maybe someone like took advantage of her and that ended up, like this, young boy in the band that he actually, might have actually killed her and throw her overboard because they were, drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third theory is sort of similar to the first one, is basically that she was like sold into slavery, which is, I don't know how that's different than like sex trafficking, but the reason that this has gotten a lot of coverage is because in 2005, there's a picture of a lady who actually looked like Amy. And so she would have been, between 1998 and 2005, she would have been, closer to about 30 years old. And this picture was posted on an online prostitution site. And if you look at the two pictures, the one of her on the last night of the cruise, and then compared to this picture from 2005, like they do very much look like the same person.
Mm-hmm.
That's gained a lot of traction. And over the past few years, like hundreds of young white women have actually mysteriously vanished from the cruise ships in the Caribbean, according to like this random, sort of like discovery like website. I don't know, if we can validate that. We'll have to dig a little deeper, but there's been several apparent or alleged sightings of Amy. One was on Curacao Beach by some Canadians on vacation. They gave like descriptions of her tattoos. One was a Tasmanian devil, and it couldn't be really verified. But their report, these tourists said that they had seen her being tailed by like quote funny looking men. The second theory of the second apparent alleged sighting was in 2005. There was a department store in Barbados that she went into like this department store bathroom and begged for help. That was could not be verified. But these are all like really heartbreaking for the family because there was one more that was apparently a brothel. And that there was this sailor that said he had gone into a brothel in the Caribbean and that she had actually like begged him for help, that he quietly left. He didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah. He felt like his hands were tied to help her for some reason.
And this was like, and this is where we get into like this a whole other tangent of like really sick people that make money off of these families, because in some cases we find that like there's actually scam and con artists that like make up these stories about these sightings of these young missing persons so that they can basically convince the families to hire them to go and do these investigations. And they get them all hyped up and lead them on to believe that like their family member will be found or reunited, and they take all their money, and then it almost always falls through. So all of these alleged sightings and the theories, I think, I don't know, it just puts that family in like an impossible situation, because you don't want to just stop, because in your heart you know that person could still be out there, could be brainwashed. Maybe they've been into slave trade or sex trafficking or whatever. But I think the more likely story is that she left that ship on the night after that dinner, and that she fell overboard or was pushed, and the ocean is like, it's really easy to disappear there. So
yeah, I mean, I think we would, with all the surveillance, all the cameras that we have, it just seems like we would be seeing her. People would be seeing her more than just like twice.
Yeah. And again, I mean, it doesn't seem likely to me that someone from, Virginia at 23 years old on vacation with her family would be taken off a ship and not put up like a hell of a fight, even if it were just like in the days afterwards. So it's really, really hard to know, but I have spent a lot of time in the Caribbean, and, I just know it's like when you're there, you have to play by their rules, and sometimes it can be very corrupt, and you just don't have the protections that you have here. And that's another reason why, like, I really, no matter like what's happening in this country right now, there's a lot of things that I'm just like so grateful for, because at the end of the day, I know that there is still some level of accountability, and we're able to be heard, and it's just a little bit safer. You can trust the government. So knock on wood. I know that there's people that have different experiences now and then, but for the most part, it's a much better place to need help when you need it, rather than like being out at sea. Wow.
Oh, yeah, that would just be, and it's not like she went with a bunch of her friends from college, and they were all just out drinking and running around. I mean, she was with her family, and although there was some autonomy in their actions, I mean, how you always feel safe, with your family around you, and for her just to suddenly just disappear without her shoes, um, that would just, you know, I don't know how the family is getting. I don't know how you can maintain your sanity, to tell you the truth. I just
No, you
don't know
can't.
how.
And that's
Not
what I was just
knowing.
thinking. I mean, exactly. I don't, it's just like, it's, there's just so many emotions that go with it, which even is like just that cycle of like, first of all, okay, she didn't want to go in the first place and they begged her to, and then that guilt on top of just like the unknowing, how do you function? How do you just get up in the morning and brush your teeth and then go to work with that feeling of, oh my gosh, my daughter is probably gone, but at the same time, she still could be out there. And am I doing enough? So, it just gives us enough gratitude. And, once again, I say like the lesson here is, just be aware of your surroundings and have gratitude for what you have. And, you know, when you're traveling or you're with, in an unknown environment, like go ahead and let everyone know where you are and, stick together. Don't
That's
go off
good
on your own.
advice. Yeah, that's really good advice, because things can happen.
Mhm.
I mean, I saw a movie uh, years back and called Hostel, and it totally opened my eyes really quickly to what could happen. And we probably shouldn't even include that in our. We should edit that out, John, because that's a terrible movie and nobody should really watch it. So I guess we shouldn't spend
No, I
time
mean, it's good. No,
plugging it.
sometimes you don't know it's terrible until you see it, but it's just like, yeah, I mean, that is definitely a movie about a paranoid fantasy, but,
Yeah.
there's some truth to it. And people do survive, like, these horrible situations of being, taken advantage of by, like, that stuff does happen to some degree. So we're just going to pray for the Bradley family and really hope, that they do get some kind of closure, because maybe someone out there knows something that they just haven't been willing to share, or they've heard something. Maybe someone on that ship had some answers that will eventually come forward. I mean, it would just be so wonderful to get some closure. It would not be great to hear that she passed away, but if she did pass away, it would be great for them to know so that they can,
Start the grieving
celebrate
process.
her life. Yeah, celebrate her life and move on.
Yeah, rather than just not knowing, you wouldn't even want to let yourself go there because of the fact that it would be admitting that there was a possibility that she was gone. So I think you wouldn't even want to allow yourself to go through that natural process, just because that would be admitting that she was to yourself that she was gone, and then you'd think, well, maybe she really isn't gone. I mean, there's nobody's psychic, although you can feel those pulls. Obviously, anybody that's been really close to anybody else has felt those pulls and those ties. But yeah, if she's out there, I just wish that we could know where she was at, so that the family could, like you said, have some closure and have some peace.
Well, I think that's it for this story. Again, it's like I think we should start inviting feedback for people that have more information or different view on this.
Yes.
But until next time, I'm John.
And I'm Diane. And you've been listening to Paranoid Fantasy.
Paranoid Fantasy.